This unfolding situation out of India, I'm just wondering what you make of it and whether you think all flights out of India should now be stopped.
Well, it is very concerning. No, I don't think all flights should be stopped. I actually think our hotel quarantine system has worked very well. We've had nearly 300,000 people go through it, and yes, there has been the odd outbreak, but India is not the only place in the world where there is coronavirus cases. I mean, in effect, our borders are closed to the world. You can come here in a limited fashion, but they must do the 14-day quarantine, and I think we've got to make sure we get those things right rather than completely shut ourselves off. I just don't. Mark McGowan here seems to be a panic merchant. He's had I think 2 versions of community cases in 12 months. Both seemingly have been dealt with, and we've actually got to grow up here and learn to live with what is going to be a spread of coronavirus around the world for years to come. Eventually we will open up to the world and there will be more cases of coronavirus here. Hopefully in that point most people are vaccinated and the risks aren't as great, but we've got to learn to live with this.
He wants to halve the intake of travellers into WA, so from over 1,000 from 1,000 down to 500. He wants to keep it there because you just can't handle it. But what does that say about the trust that he might have with his tracing team? It seems to be non-existent.
Well, look, I think that's a really fair point. I don't know why he doesn't trust them, or seemingly doesn't trust them here. They seem to have done an excellent job when they've been tested. There's been, as I say, a couple of outbreaks in WA, and they've done a very good job at testing and tracing. And thank God, unfortunately, we haven't seen wider outbreaks here. If anything, we should be getting better at this and able to take more people, because there are still thousands of Australians stranded overseas that want to come home, and I feel very much for them. We've seen the hypocritical stance of the Labor Party in the last year, both whinging that there are too many Australians waiting overseas, but also then saying, well, we need to have stricter controls and shut down access to our country, etc. I think we've just got to have a balanced and consistent position here. Yes, we have to have serious controls about those entering our country. That is going to limit the numbers we can take at any one time. That is very unfortunate for those Australians overseas, but we must do our best to get through that backlog of people and help out Australians in need.
If we send, these decisions are going to be made later on today, but if we send ventilators to India, if we send oxygen to India, is there a danger that we may well be left short if there is an outbreak here later on down the track?
Oh, look, I think that's a very remote possibility, Peter. We overproduced ventilators last year. We've got an excess supply of them. There's no imminent risk here. Keep in mind, India is the medicine factory for the world. A lot of the world's vaccines, a lot of the world's pharmaceuticals are made in India. There were some controls imposed by India at the start of the coronavirus, but overall, India has exported its factory output to the world, and so there is an obligation on here, I think, us to return that favour. And as I say, we're in a comfortable position. We should be helping countries that are worse impacted. We did that with PNG in our region, and we should do the same here with India. The great news story about that last year is that we can, when we put our mind to it, manufacture things still in this country. We did have a potential shortage of ventilators at the start of the outbreak, but within months, thanks to the good work of Karen Andrews and the LNP government and our manufacturing sector, we ended up with an excess supply very quickly. So I don't have any concern that we would respond again if there were to be a wider outbreak in this country.
Okay, Senator, what about these comments from Mike Pezzullo? The drums of war are beating. The country must be prepared to send off yet again our warriors to fight. Now, he doesn't mention China, but I guess that's the general assumption. What do you make? Do you think it's over the top, or are they justified?
Look, I haven't seen all his comments in context, but what I would say here is I welcome frank talk about the situation we face. I think on the balance of risks here, we face too much minimisation of the threat, too much ignorance of how difficult things might get very quickly. And so that leads us into these, I think, fantasy paths where we want to follow a yellow brick road to net zero emissions, not rebuild our manufacturing, industrial and defence capacity to deal with the clear and imminent threat that exists before us. So, there's no doubt that there are the drums of war beating in our region, at least in terms and regards to Taiwan. It's not clear exactly what that might mean for us, but there may be a risk that a wider conflict does occur. because of that. And we should absolutely be prepared for that. So I welcome Mike Pezzullo speaking frankly from his obviously very well-informed position, because I do think the Australian people need a wake-up call.
Would we have to get involved? I mean, President Xi yesterday unveiled 3 new warships, and I guess the fear is that he's stealing for a fight. He's getting ready to retake Taiwan, and if that's the case, then do we go in?
I think that all depends on the circumstances, and I'm not about to outline all of those hypotheticals right now. They are very, very complex, but I do think we must be ready for the worst outcome. As Mike Pezzullo said, no one here wants to see this outcome. In fact, we need to do all we can to deter such a decision being made by the Chinese government, because we all don't want to end up in it. But of course, we have to hope for the best and prepare for the worst. And if we want to avoid a conflict, sometimes the best way to do that is make sure we're prepared for one. So there is that deterrence. And I do think, especially in terms of our industrial capabilities as a country, we are not as well prepared as we should be. Our manufacturing industry is declining, and we need to reverse that trend and rebuild it in the face of these threats. So we should get back to why aren't we building coal-fired power stations like the Chinese Communist Party is? Why are we pursuing aggressive emission cuts when clearly China is not? We need to face these real clear facts and respond as a nation.
All right, Senator Matt Canavan. Always good to chat. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Peter. Have a good day, mate.
You too.